Hey coaches, it's Kevin Middleton here. I have coached at every level of the game, every format of the game, and I have taken not one team, not two teams, but three teams from 7-a-side to 9-a-side. This is where players really start to understand the full game, where tactics begin to matter as much as technique. And if I was starting again with 9v9, this is exactly what I would do. Times. So I've got a lot of resources, a lot of experience for coaching 9v9 football. All of the resources that I've collected over the years are now available within my community. So these have been refined over years and years of practical application. There's plenty of information about 9v9 out there, but for me, it's about having everything in one place, and the resources that I have shared, I know they work because I've used them successfully 3 different times. So first thing I would do if I was coaching 9v9 is I would try to work out my formation. What is going to play to my team's strengths and to their weaknesses? But most importantly, what is going to aid their development in this crucial year of football? I've got to say is that formations are really just starting points. Everybody knows that. They are fluid. But how can we use those formations as the starting point, as the reference point for our players, and then to aid their development? So I'm just going to drop into Canva here. And you'll see here I've got 2 different formations on the screen. So I have a 3-4-1, which was my preferred formation on any side, and I'll go over why, against a 2-4-2. So 2 defenders, 4 midfielders, 2 strikers, matching up against 3 defenders, 4 midfielders, and a single striker. So the thing for me is if you're going to play a 2-4-2, for example, at 11 aside, I think it just transitions naturally into a 4-4-2. So you can just add a couple of players in those key positions and you can transition to 4-4-2 very easily. And at 9 aside, these 2 players, your wide players, they will naturally drop back during the game. So if you have wide players who are good at attacking but poor at defending, they will get ample opportunities at 9 aside to practice their defending because they'll be up and down that side of the pitch a lot. Also, you've got two midfielders here in the central area of the park. One could sit, one could go. They would have to communicate. They'd have to talk to each other. They'd have to work out who was going to sit, who was going to go, because if they both went, obviously there would be big gaps in the middle of the park the other team could exploit. 2 strikers as well. So 2 different roles here. One has to stretch the game going that way, and one has to drop into the space going that way. Or if he makes a channel run, he then has to become the central striker. So this gives you a little bit of adaptability when you move to 11 aside as well, because you could have a single striker up the park, and then you could have an attacking midfielder, a cam, sitting in the pocket of space behind that striker. And again, a good learning opportunity for these 2 players to work together, to communicate, and to understand when one of them goes on a run, the other has to sit or move into the space. If one of them comes short, one of them has to go long. And it's a great opportunity for you to actually talk about that. So this formation 2-4-2 is fantastic for keeping possession in the middle of the park. The spine here, you've got 6 players jamming the middle of the park. It's natural that you're going to try to keep possession through the thirds, through your superiority, through the middle of the park. Also, it's good for 2 defenders because they can get exposed in the wide areas. So if one has to go wide to the ball, if it was there and someone was attacking, the other one would then need to come in and cover naturally, like it happens at 11 aside. So that's the 2-4-2, and I like that formation. My preferred formation, though, was 3-4-1. And the reason it was my preferred formation was that at 11 aside, you would just need to drop in another fullback, like so, and then you would obviously push these players a bit higher. This player would be the striker, and you could then transition to a 4-2-3-1 very, very easily. And if I just rewind what I've done there and go back to my formation, the reason I like this formation for doing that is these wide centre backs, they will have to naturally go and defend the wide areas during the game because there's no fullbacks. So they'll naturally have to go, and the other players will have to then tuck in and make a 2. So that's them getting practice at being fullbacks. Also, these two players here, same as the 2-4-2, one has to sit and one has to go. So, for example, if they're building, this player's on the ball, this player is there, this player might actually go into that pocket of space or sit, and this player might go higher while the striker would come across. There's a lot of fluidity to this formation, and it requires players to just adapt to space rather than stick to a rigid formation. And I think from a rotational point of view, if you're practicing rotations, it's a fantastic one to do that, because this player might go on the dribble and then this player might actually have to come and sit back, depending on your principles of play and what you're trying to teach your team. So again, I think it's a fantastic one for teaching that, because these wide players will naturally, the wing backs will naturally get up and down the line. They'll get practice at being a defender, attacker, as well as just a midfielder. So 11 aside, when they go higher, they'll have had lots of repetition at attacking from a wide area. We've also got this player who's going to have to do a lot of different roles in the striker position. He's going to have to drop short for the ball, so he's going to operate in that pocket space. He's going to have to run the channels. He's going to have to be the central striker, depending on your principles. So this player gets a lot of repetition at being that attacking midfielder, that cam in the 4-2-3-1. And so do these players when they naturally go and one sits. That might be your principle. Your principle might be that both of them go and the three defenders sit. There's loads of flexibility around this formation about how you want to teach your players what they need to know for the next step. And that is, as I said, the 4-3-2-1, or it might be 4-3-3. It naturally transitions to both. So I think it's fantastic for teaching both defensive, offensive, and transitional concepts. But the thing for me is it's natural wide triangles as well, which is a massive part of the game. So this player may play into here, who'll play into there. Striker that run the channel, ball would go in there. Natural triangles all over the place, which something like a 2-4-2 will have trouble actually matching up against, not in midfield. But if we can work the ball out to a wide fullback, for example, like this, and he can break forward, this player can go higher. This player then faces a dilemma. Do I go to the ball or do I track the run? Loads of flexibility around 3-4-1. I'm a huge fan of it, as you could probably tell. But from a development point of view, from a development point of view, it's multi-position. There's rotations on the go, as I said. There's a lot of roles and responsibilities, but most of all, it's something that you can bring out all your principles in. So that's the formations. The last formation I talked about was the 4-3-1. I'm not going to go over that because I think that naturally, as the game progresses, this will happen if you play a 2-4-2 rather. When you're defending, one of the strikers may have to drop in to help, and your wide players will get pushed back from a defensive point of view as well. So there's loads of practice at that within the 2-4-2. There's also practice at it in the 3-4-1, depending on what you want to do, because you may have this situation where this player gets dragged out, the defender tucks in, and we have to sit like this. So it's kind of an inverted 4-3-1, but it's still going to be a 4-3-1 as well. So loads of repetition, loads of practice of formations. I know I've gone on about formations a lot in the last few minutes, but I think it's key to get the formation that you want to play right, one that transitions naturally to 11-a-side football, and one where your players can get loads of practice from a development point of view, all the concepts they need to understand by 11-a-side football. That was a lot of information about formations. So hopefully that's understood, that it's a development tool and nothing more, nothing less. The next step in your planning for 9-a-side would be to define what you want to teach players, when you want to teach it, and how you want to teach it. And within the community that I've built, I have put my 360 TFT game model, my youth development framework within the community. So if we just head to that, I can explain it further there. But basically, the game model course defines everything that players need to understand at different levels and different ages and different stages of their mastery cycle, as I call it. So they need to master the ball before they master the opponent. They need to master the opponent before they can master the game. At the age group we're talking about, we're definitely into master the game, 12 to 18 years old. And master the game just basically defines what I think they need to know from a principle point of view to succeed in football. So it doesn't go into depth about how to play a formation and how to exploit the opposition's weaknesses. It focuses purely on what your players need to know and understand at different stages of their development. And we've got 5 core topics that are explored in the game model: in possession, out of possession, and transition to attack, and transition to defend rather, and then match related. So just going into in possession, there's a few key areas that I think they need to master when they have possession of the ball. And those key areas are broken down and defined in the 16-week training cycle blocks. And there's loads of repetition of the core concepts for all of the core topics throughout those 16 weeks. Let me just give you an example. So we've got team shape and block compactness, which is a defensive topic. And we've got the whole training session prescribed in this image. And here we've got a framework which I use to teach, and it's the moment slice situation framework. So everything that you coach players is relating to an area of the pitch. It's related to a moment. Are you defending? Are you attacking? Are you transitioning? It's related to a slice of the pitch. So if we're defending, it's the defensive third, the middle third, and the final third. If we're attacking, it's build up, creating the attack, and finishing the attack. And the situation is, what are we actually doing here? So if it's defending in the defensive third, are we working as a unit, or are we setting the block, etc., etc.? I think you get the idea from what I'm saying. And if we go down, we've got a lot of different training session plans linked to what we are actually trying to teach from a principal point of view that week, with some coach prompts to help you prompt the players, get them to think, and promote a deeper understanding. So what I would do is I would stick to this structure across the 16 weeks. I wouldn't let the noise of the weekend's match or what happened 2 weeks ago in a game break me from this cycle. I would stick to it, and I would teach the players the principles that they need at this stage that they can then take forward into 11-a-side football. So I said earlier on, it's not getting good at 9-a-side, it's preparing players for 11-a-side football. So these concepts and the 16-week plans will flow naturally from 9s to 11s. All you're doing is scaling it back a little bit in terms of numbers for your 9-a-side group, but you are teaching them the core concepts they need for 11-a-side football, and you're using the formation as a development tool so they can practice those concepts within the game. Next thing I would do for 9-a-side football, and this is something I learned a very harsh lesson about in my first year at 9-a-side, I would give the players responsibilities. I would give them a lot of responsibilities at this age group and at this stage of their football development for various reasons. But essentially, 9-a-side is a funny squad size. So you can only play 9 players, but you need an 11-a-side squad size. So not everyone's involved on the pitch at the same time. Self-explanatory. But you need to keep that squad size intact because you need it for 11-a-side football. So if you give players responsibilities and roles, then they can feel involved even when they're not on the pitch participating. Even if they're a sub, you keep them involved, you give them responsibilities. Now, that's very cryptic, but let me break down what I mean. So in the match day section of the community, there is this thing called the Grassroots Football Pack. So we download this, we will get it onto our computer, and we've got various files that can help you with your team, no matter which format they're playing at. We've got some 9-a-side files here. We've got that 9-a-side formation guide, but we've also got this 9-a-side match day planner as well. So if I just open this up, I'll let you see what I mean and how it relates to giving players responsibilities. So as I said, I didn't do this in my first year at 9s. It was a huge mistake for me. But if we can take a planner, we can print this out, we can fill it in, and we can take it to games. And you get this as a PowerPoint presentation. You get this as a Canva file as well if you want to edit it in Canva. But essentially, what we can do is we can start to write our principles down, and we can get that shared understanding with players. So what have we been working on? What are our principles? Is it to, win the first tackle, header, bouncing ball? Is it to create as much space as possible from a width and depth point of view? These are simple principles on the screen. You can change them to whatever you want to. You get a blank version to do that. For me, it was really, really important to start defining who's the captain, who's the vice captain today, who's taking the corners, who's taking the free kicks, who's taking the penalties. You could leave that up to your players on the day, or you could shout it from the sidelines. I used to do that, but as soon as I started giving players responsibilities for this, on the pitch, the captain would organise the team. And that extra level of responsibility, I think, can lift players up, and they can give them a voice and gives them communication skills, which are sadly lacking in football these days. I also think that defining everything beforehand and giving players responsibility for organising it is a really good thing, because it lets them communicate with each other on the pitch and gives them leadership skills. Again, this is what I would do before the game. I'd define the starting nine like this. I'd write it down. I'd give them some instructions. It would be all in a pack at the side of the pitch. It would be up to the players on arrival to read this pack. It would not be up to me to stand there for 5 minutes explaining everything to them every single week. That's not how football works at 11-a-side level, in my opinion. You have to start giving the players some responsibility. You have to start giving the players information. They take ownership, they feel part of it, and they grow in their leadership and responsibility skills, as I said. So they would have a look at this on arrival. They would make sure they know who was playing and where they were playing and who was a sub. You could even define kickoffs if you wanted to. So I did that. And you can plan that with your team. And again, it's their responsibility. It's their responsibility to know where they're playing on the pitch and their role on corners against, and corners from the left for and from the right for. Stuff you would see at 11-a-side, but we start to drip feed this in at 9-a-side so that these players start to understand the requirements of football at that level. And again, this is fully customizable. You get the customizable version for downloading, and that's free in the community as part of membership. So that was really important for me, because how else are we going to grow leadership skills in these young players, which are really, really key at 11-a-side football? It's very, very difficult to do that unless we start giving them responsibilities and leadership responsibilities with that. And using this pack was a bit of a game changer for me, because the players who were not involved, the subs, they also had a role using this pack. If one of their teammates wasn't quite getting what they were supposed to be doing, the players at the sideline could consult this pack and then help their teammates out on the pitch. It also meant the subs, when they were going on, they were given their position, could go and have a look at their responsibilities on corners and things like this. These are all things that they will have to do at 11-a-side, and it's great to start them at 9-a-side. And the last thing I would do for 9-a-side football is I would educate myself a bit more. When I was going into 9-a-side in the first season, it was new in Scotland, so there wasn't a lot of material out there for 9-a-side football. So essentially, I had to create what you've seen so far from scratch. But I would also, at this point, if I was doing it again, use the resources available to educate myself. And in the community, again, we've got a whole coaching education section. Just to point you to this masterclass series that we do with a lot of third parties. This is a fantastic resource, not only to learn about 9-a-side, but to also learn from different coaches operating at different levels of the game, especially at 11-a-side. Because again, this is transition to 11s. It's not get good at 9-a-side football. You don't win anything at 9-a-side football. You win it at 11-a-side football. So it's really important to get really, really good and comfortable with 11-a-side football at this stage. So that's what I would do. There's one more thing to show you within the classroom. If I go to the 9v9 section, there is a coach wellbeing section here. Now, coaching can be very lonely. You can burn out if you're not careful. You need to know how to manage it. There needs to be a way for you to stay in the game without losing yourself, as I always say it. So we have this section on the site that's dedicated to help you look after yourself. We also have a Sunday night call, which is called the Coaches Decompression Call. It's not recorded. There's no judgment. We have coaches coming on. They'll tell us their stories from the weekend, frustrations they've had when things have gone wrong, when things have gone right. But most of all, they come on to just explain how they feel and also to get some help, advice, and some tips from myself. So these things are available for you to prevent you from burning out. So education and well-being, two huge areas of passion for me. And we've got some content on the community for you to look after yourself and educate yourself as well. So the steps that I would go through if I was coaching 9v9 again in the next year or so. You know, the 4 pillars that we've covered here, the formation understanding, the systematic development planning, the continuous education, looking after yourself, the community connection, they're not just nice to haves at 9-a-side, they are essential. And I'm closing by going on to our 11v11 section. You can see that it's a little bit bigger than the 9v9 section because of the depth of the 11v11 game, the number of years it covers. That's probably going to be my next protocol if I was going to coach 9-a-side. what do I need to explain to the players week to week, day to day, in order to get them ready for 11-a-side football? Well, I need to understand 11-a-side football, right? So this section will become invaluable for me doing that. Listen, thank you so much. I would love for you to be a part of this community and to receive all of this education and all these resources. So hopefully I'll see you in the community one day. If I don't, please feel free to reach out. If you've got any questions, pop them in the comment. I'm happy to answer them. And until next time, catch you later. So that's it. I just want to highlight the community one more time. We've got some things in progress, but we've got a lot of things on the go here, from 3v3, 4v4, 5v5 to 7v7, 9v9, 11v11. This community is absolutely huge. 1,200 coaches. You can see they're spread all over the world. They come from every single background, every single format, every single level. They've worked with players in different environments, and every single one of them contributes to this community on a daily basis. You cannot help but increase your knowledge as a coach in this community. And if I was coaching 7-a-side again, I would certainly want to come into something like this. And I wish there was something like this when I actually started coaching way back when. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.